Hello and
Hey,
welcome.
Hello.
It was a long time coming. The 45th Tech Talk
that's a lot of
from
tech
46
talks.
Oaks. Yes, it is. So it is Friday. We usually do these things on Friday. So welcome everyone for joining, and welcome everyone for joining. Right? You can tell that I didn't do this for a year or something. So hello everyone and welcome Rupus. Welcome Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So today we're going to cover an interesting topic about using Python as in enterprise environments, right? So in essence, it is sometimes viewed that Java, C Sharp, other languages that come from relatively big organizations are actually a good substitute or a good way to go when you want to build a serious infrastructure, right? So today we're going to kind of dive into that rhetoric and see how that holds up in 2024. So, yeah, let's start with some questions we have prepared. And if everyone wants to join in, we have the chat here available. So it is available here for us to see. And if you have some question, we'll put up your question and answer it. So that's what it's all about. So cool. All right, let's get going. So kind of the first question is, why is there a notion about the Python is not cut out for big business software? What does Python do to kind of prove them wrong? What would you say?
Well, I'd say it's probably the biggest argument is that it's too slow, and also that dynamic typing won't work in big projects. But I think we'll see. Lots of big companies have used Python in big projects. For example, Instagram was built on Django, I think. I think they've switched now, but they, for a very long time, used Django for very, very big and performance critical software stack. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. So Martin, what do you say? Well, why do people say that it's not cut out for big business software? Yeah.
Python is usually used as a school language, and that was how it began. And I think that has, in combination with not being the most performant language to execute, people have thought that, oh yeah, we need to find this extremely big and extremely fast frameworks. And usually that was Java or similar languages, or like writing everything in C or C++. But nowadays, the critical parts of Python are implemented in C. So it usually is fast enough, even if it's not the fastest.
And also computers are very fast
Yes.
nowadays.
Yeah. You can get a lot of computing power for basically less than before, and it's
Yeah.
more readily available than before.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing because with all of us that kind of tried programming and went into programming, we saw what Java can bring you, what in the first couple of hours what you can learn to do in Java, and how much of a hassle it is to build the very basic things in Java, and how the learning curve actually is really different between Java and, for example, Python or whatever other language. So would you say that actually, I don't know who mentioned it, Martin or Europe, is that the fact that it's being used in school, was used in schools, was used in education as kind of a gateway programming language, was that actually the reason why it's being used in enterprises now more? Because you have a generation now that grew up kind of on Python.
Totally. Having people know the language made more people focus on making it more efficient. So Python has developed a lot since the first versions. And now being used in schools, it has been more and more used for artificial intelligence, and that has pushed a lot for performance behind the scenes. So yeah, I definitely think it has improved the ecosystem.
What are your feelings, Rupus, about having? Is that the right way? Should we push for other enterprise languages in education? How do you feel about that?
I think it's good to have people learn many different languages and not get stuck with just one and feel like that's their main language or something like that. I think it's good that you feel like you can pick up any programming language quickly, and you can learn doing that by programming in different languages. And I think it's good to do that early in your education. So I think you should in schools they should expose students to many different languages, those that are used in enterprises or just in businesses in general.
We kind of saw that. Well, what you kind of point out, Rupus, it's not isolating. It's not realistic to be isolated on one programming language, because, well, what you have now is you have to mix things, right? So, to one of our questions is, how do we mix things now? How do we figure out usage with Python with other tech we have in the company? How much does it sometimes worsen the situation? How much does it help? We had some recent examples. We talked about it when we talk about like on our team, within our team talks. So what would you say? Like, is it sometimes a helpful thing? Is it sometimes an impediment? How does Python connect with other tech?
Python is commonly used as a glue language, like gluing together different parts of or different software frameworks and different software stacks. Most of our Python is for gluing different software components together. So fitting Python in your current stack is very easy. That's how most people use Python to glue together different software. Yeah, I think yeah, I don't know. It's an easy language to get started with. So
yeah.
And also it makes it very easy to make small scripts that interact with your current code base or projects or so if you
Does that lead to a mess in the long run? Like when you have a small script that you can.
It can, but if you can make the necessary small scripts smaller and more manageable and easier to understand, it usually makes less of a mess than the alternative of building a whole new ecosystem to include everything. So instead you can just have different parts talking together with Python as the middleman.
It's I've noticed some. I found some statistics online when they compared Java in simple I/O tasks and processor threads available. So it seems as though that Java took a lot more resources and a lot more time to do some simple tasks. But you mentioned, I think we lost the music, but you mentioned that there is performance issues. So what would you point out? Is Python actually fast enough when it comes to handling heavy stuff?
it very much depends on what you're doing. If you're doing mostly I/O, like doing network requests or shuffling data around, then Python is more than fast enough. But if you are doing some compute-heavy tasks, then Python might not be the best language to write the core part of that program in. and that's most of the time you can get away. And like the data science people and the AI people, the actual compute heavy parts of the programs are not written in Python. It's Python calling C mostly, C or Rust or any other language. So yeah, depends on what you're doing. For IO bound tasks, Python is very good.
And most stuff are web based in some form nowadays, so it's very well suited to that.
It's so it always comes down to the same thing. So if you want to bring up performance, you always get closer and closer and closer to machine language. So you get closer to assembler, you get closer to, so that's C. That's then, even if you want to go
Compiled
lower.
language will be faster, usually. But the question is
Yeah.
it fast enough? And how fast can you get something working? And that's usually more important.
Yeah, it's a interesting outtake on what you actually want to achieve. So the end goal, I think, is to figure out how things work best for your system. So it's kind of like a leverage between the two. I do remember beforehand, and we can touch upon this one before we kind of close up. Is well, when I kind of got started, it was 2008. You still there was some developments in the virtual private servers that were readily available with mostly LAMP, so that's Linux, Apache, and MySQL,
And
PHP, yeah, or Python. So it was readily available. It started to develop. Companies like DigitalOcean appeared, where you could buy off rent off for a month VPS and run it for $5 a month. So I think that brought in some new technologies and kind of saved us as a community from having big chunky companies taking and making the decision making. But what are your thoughts of that? Is that how much of that is a good thing to have more freedom? It's a philosophy. Like, I know this is more like a deep question, but is it good to have this approach where you have more freedom, or is it better to have a structured approach where some sort of company like Oracle comes in and offers solution, or SAP offers some solutions in the ERP world? So what is your thinking? What are your inner thoughts? Does it depend on some factors? How would you comment on that?
I would say that owning your software stack is a very good thing, and not outsourcing tech to other companies. Now, some companies are not able to do that. They are not. They're not run by people that know tech and can't hire people that know tech, and then they'll have to, like, they have a right to exist as a company, but they just because they can't own their software stack, they should still be allowed to exist. But if you can, then owning your software stack is gives you lots of advantages.
And it's very freeing to be able to switch out any component of the software stack that you have. So, like, if you want to switch which web framework you use or which database you use, you can, and it's usually not that difficult.
Yeah, it's Rupus, like you pointed out, it's very much or what you have to achieve, what you need as a company. So obviously, if you have non-tech personnel, and but your focus is on other things, so obviously you want to get things working, having them just like modularly implemented within your company, without a lot of thinking and a lot of, let's say, tweaking to your for your company's needs. So yeah, I guess there's there are solutions for everyone out there. But if you're a tech company, you want to obviously control things. You want to abide by certain principles within your company. So yeah, I think that kind of is the whole message around Python or similar languages. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on for some sort of a future startup or someone that isn't very much in tech but wants to develop their own thing? What would you recommend? How do they start off fresh in 2024? So they want to build, they have some sort of a company where they have a sort of a product that they want to sell online. It's a web shop, but they have to also run things in the background in order to keep track of that product, its development, etc., etc., etc. So what would you recommend to them that they start using if they have a tech team in 2024? Like, what would your off the bat be? Would it be an off the shelf solution, or would you say that they go with a certain technology, or it depends, as it always
It
does?
depends. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's that's always the answer. But
And
yeah,
especially on what your tech team is currently comfortable with.
yeah.
Uh,
Interesting. Okay. So,
so if you have, if you want to write everything in JavaScript and run everything in the browser, if you have a browser-based application, you can, and then it doesn't really matter what you use in the background to deliver that. If you want something lightweight and easy to set up, you could go with Flask or Bottle or Django. And even then, you can pick and choose which engine you want behind that, whether it's Waitress or Unicorn or
yeah, and developer, what you are familiar with is important. I think bad Python is always worse than good JavaScript, and vice versa. So if you're familiar and comfortable with JavaScript, then you should use that. Or if you're comfortable with Rust, then you should use that. Or if you're familiar with Python, you should probably use that. There are features and things that might make learning the other one worth it, but if you're starting up, I don't think it's worth that cost. It's better to just get something out there.
super. So I think that kind of wraps up our talk today. We'll share in the chat the link that we use to sort of inspire this talk and what we use to get going with this talk. This is the resource I've shared in the chat, so you can take a look. Everyone watching can take a look at it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks, Rupus, thanks, Martin, for being a part of this talk. And well, see you some other time, I guess.
See you next time.
yeah. See you.
Yeah. Bye.